pleased to have Bleacher Report's own, one of the finest in the association media, none other than Howard Beck back here on the show. How are you, Howard?
I'm doing all right, Rich. How are you?
Hanging in there. I did see you the other day. Have you really not had a haircut during the quarantine at all? How long have you gone without a haircut?
I have not. March 13th was my last haircut. This is, I think, the longest I've gone in my adult life without a haircut.
Wow.
It's looking really wild. I'm approaching, before I finally got rid of the lockdown beard because it was just too much. I was approaching Saul Berenson of Homeland levels.
Okay. Great, good Mandy Patinkin reference.
An episode where he'd been kidnapped and in a cell somewhere, in Pakistan for 3 months. That's what
you had.
Bad. So I at least got rid of the Saul Berenson beard, but the hair is a disaster.
Not to ruin it for anybody, but the Saul Berenson character in Homeland, played by the great Mandy Patinkin. If you ever notice, and Homeland viewers will notice, Saul is always walking. He's always going somewhere.
Aggressively.
He's walking aggressively.
Aggressively
walking through an office, walking to a phone. He's constantly walking. He doesn't stand still. He's constantly walking. No. Have you noticed that?
Always angry.
I know.
He's a busy man, and he's got urgent matters to deal with at all times,
Yes.
much like me.
Again, you're very Saul Berenson-like, so I'm glad you got rid of the beard and you're here on the show. Where do things stand right now in the association? We're ready to tip off. Is that what's happening right now? What do you got for me?
I have been trying to preach, not caution, but caveats ever since they started down this road of we're going to restart the season. It's going to be in a bubble. It's going to be at the Disney campus. And everybody says, okay, great, we're back. Let's talk. Who's the favorites? And I've just, every time I've tried to pump the brakes, just saying, listen, there's a plan, but that doesn't mean we're actually, we're a long way from there. 3 weeks ago, whenever they first started to roll this out, we were still almost 2 months from a start date. As you and I talked today, we're still 5-6 weeks or something from when they'll play the first game or hope to play the first game. And as I've said all along, a lot can change. Well, a lot has changed. In the last 3 weeks, certain parts of the country, including Orange County, Florida, where the Disney Wide World of Sports complex is gotten really bad. The worst surge of cases that we've seen in months. So that certainly would give me pause. Whether that gives Adam Silver pause or the Players Union pause or anyone else associated with this restart plan, we'll see. I have no doubt that it does. I'm sure that they're monitoring this and are not thrilled with what they're seeing unfold. But at the same time, I don't know what the threshold is. How bad does it have to get? How many hospitalizations per day, or how many deaths? How many cases? What's the tipping point for them to say, it's just not worth it? I don't know if there's a number. I don't know if this is just by feel, or if one day their epidemiologists that they're consulting walk in. Well, they don't walk into any offices at this point, but they pull up Adam on the Zoom call and say, Adam, we think you got to call this thing off. I don't know what that tipping point is, but I assume that there is one. And but look, right now it's all it's all a go, and there are players that we've seen day by day deciding not to go. But it's only a handful. The league is viable. The stars are all going as far as we can tell, and I think chances are this still probably happens unless things get really catastrophic in Central Florida.
Well, just like everything, Howard, COVID is finding the weak spots in everything. Whether it's our healthcare system or people's relationships, just seriously, not to go too deep here, but it is real world stuff that COVID seems to find the weak spots, people's feelings of loneliness, and it just keeps on putting the pressure on. Trevor Ariza saying he's not going because he's got visitation rights for only 1 month this year, and it's during the bubble time. He's not going. This is real life stuff. Are you hearing any more stories of maybe people coming over from Europe don't want to come because, Western Europe, the European Union seems to have gotten a much better handle on this than our country? What are you hearing about players? Because that's, to me, the way that this doesn't go. That whatever plan they have for COVID and their health and safety protocols they feel is ready to just got to get everyone there, and then they can zip up the community there. And in Disney World. What are you hearing from other players that say, I don't want to go for whatever reason?
Something that an agent told me a couple of weeks back was, and I don't remember what the number he threw out was, and I don't even know if it was just an estimate on his part just based on conversations, but there were I think a few dozen players who had girlfriends or wives expecting children this summer, or sometime between, now and maybe when the bubble ends. And they were saying, listen, just on that alone, guys are not going to want to be cut off from their pregnant girlfriends, pregnant wives. That's a perfectly reasonable thing. And he's like, keep an eye out for that. In terms of guys coming back from Europe, I mean, I haven't heard anything, or from around the world, I haven't heard anything along those lines in terms of just, that the U.S. is in a worse off shape than a lot of other places. But look, anything you or I could think of that might crop up as a concern, the spike in cases in Florida, any general concern about exposing yourself, travel, what it might mean for your family, just injury concerns, because they've all been off for so long that nobody's in basketball shape, and they're only going to have a few weeks to ramp up. This is like nothing else they've ever done, because in a normal off season, you have access to gyms, and you're still playing pickup ball, and you still can work with your trainer. This is like nothing else that these players have been through. A lot of them haven't even had access to the baskets to shoot at. And they're going to jump back in, play 8 glorified exhibitions for some of these teams, these seeding games that are going to determine, the 1 through 8 in the East and West, and maybe determine whether a couple teams can sneak into the 8th seed in the East and West. They're going to play a couple weeks of these games, and then they're going to jump into playoffs. And so, Davis Bertans of the Wizards decides to opt out of this whole thing because he's heading toward free agency and the first major payday of his career, because he's just had a breakout season and has had a couple of ACLs. Like, why? Of course he wouldn't want to risk that under these circumstances. So any of these concerns, they're all valid, and these are personal decisions these guys are making. I don't blame any one of them if they decide to opt out, and they're giving up their paycheck for those games to do it, so they're willing to make that sacrifice, and I think people just need to respect that.
Howard Beck, a Bleacher Report here on the Rich Eisen Show. And so, in terms of players that are going there, and the seedings and everything, like that hasn't changed, right? We're still on with those 8 games. Those are going to be played for sure. Nothing's changed on everything that we heard from a few weeks ago.
No. Yeah, I mean, look, nothing's changed, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility that it changes. I mean, I've been in the camp all along of, don't bring any more teams than you have to, because every team is more bodies, and more bodies means more potential risk. And it's just a math question. It's just a probabilities question. So if it gets really bad in Orlando, does the NBA decide, we're not calling it off, but man, forget the 22 teams. Let's just go 16. They'll play a few, they'll do a round robin exhibition to get everybody back into game shape, and then we'll jump into the playoffs. Forget the seeding games. Let's just bring the 8 in the East and the 8 in the West, who were, had the top spots when we suspended. They could theoretically do that. I don't think they will, because, everybody's bought into a certain, schedule or a plan, and there's money attached to that plan, and there are teams that are, have everything in the works to go. I don't think they'll call that off. But that would be one way of doing this, would be just to streamline this a little. And look, they don't have to play best of 7 every round. It wasn't that long ago that we had a best of 5 first round, and actually it was really great. You could streamline this. You could decide to spend less time down there. So there are a number of measures they could take if they want to try to minimize the burden on the players and personnel, if they want to minimize the risk a little bit more. But, as of right now, I think it's full speed ahead with this plan, with 22 teams and full best of 7 series, and a very long time down there, because there's $1 billion at stake.
What are you hearing about coaches? I mean, Pop is 70, right? I mean, what are you hearing about that? I mean, the union players and the association is one thing here, but what are you hearing about coaches who might be in the vulnerable or at-risk community?
The case that the league has made, and I've heard, various people who work, on the medical side within the league make this case too, is that everybody, once they get there, will be safer there in the NBA bubble than they would be back at home, because the think about Pop, for instance. Texas is a place, I don't know about San Antonio in particular or where he lives within that area, but Texas is one of the places where cases are really spiking. Now they're spiking in Florida, but if you are, the whole point of the bubble is that you are tested every day. You're not encountering anybody outside of the bubble. You're not leaving the NBA's campus. And so you have, in theory, less risk, less encounters with random people who could be asymptomatic carriers. Now, the Disney employees are going to come and go, but they're not supposed to have any interaction with or get anywhere near anybody who is in the NBA bubble, players, coaches, or otherwise. So in theory, you're safer, in theory. But if I were 70 years old, an NBA coach, if I were Pop, if I were Mike D'Antoni, who's a few years younger than that, if I were Alvin Gentry, I don't know. It would give me pause. As safe as it might be, as many precautions as they're taking, I don't know that I think I just want to just barricade myself in my house until there's a vaccine. I just don't know that I want to take that kind of risk. But these guys they're competitors, and they're married to their jobs. Coaches are different than you and me. They're these guys. They're gym rats. There's a reason Pop's still doing this at his age. He doesn't need to. He could have retired long ago. But, and Alvin Gentry and Mike D'Antoni have both been on the record very stubbornly or adamantly emphatically saying, we're going, we'll be fine.
Couple more minutes left with Bleacher Report senior NBA writer Howard Beck. We were discussing this on our Monday show, Howard, about pumping in crowd noise. We're seeing the Premier League have an ability to watch the games, watch the matches with crowd noise, and with somebody using the EA Madden Sports sound effects that they have accrued from real matches overseas. And again, this is not a facetious question because I'll ask my EP Don Bowie to put up on our screen right here the Western Conference standings. When you look at the Western Conference standings, the Lakers sitting atop at 1, and who knows who's going to be 8. But just again, Jazz, Thunder, going to Utah and winning a game, going to Oklahoma City and winning a game in a playoff series is monster difference, right? So are they just going to just say it's the same? I mean, in game 1, let's say game 7 of a playoff series, and I'm being serious here, between the Jazz and the Thunder goes down. Can they pump in the noise in a way to make it louder for the Thunder to actually communicate in a timeout, because it would be figuratively in Utah? I mean, are they going to try in any way, shape, or form mimic a home court advantage that might even come into play if it's Lakers-Clippers?
I don't know what they're going to do. Okay. I think that there's a strong case to be made that they should do what you're saying. As weird as it might be, as manufactured as it might be, and there's going to be a psychological disconnect because visually you'll look around and there's a handful of people in the gym, but your ears are hearing, the semblance of your home crowd or the away crowd. And you could absolutely manufacture it. There's no question the technology exists and the audio exists to do this, where you could have MVP chants when LeBron's at the foul line, if it's a Laker home game, but you could have him getting booed and taunted and everything else when it's a road game against the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round. You could do that. You could have the cheers, the boos, everything to simulate it. Will it have the same psychological effect? Will it actually replicate a home court advantage when you know exactly that you're still in the same place? It's the same court you were standing on 2 days ago when it was a road game, and now it's a home game, but I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, and I don't know what the NBA will ultimately do. I do strongly suspect that they will not allow it to just be quiet, because the home audience will hear too much. The reporters who are in the stands will hear too much, and they don't want us hearing all the things that are said between players or between coaches and players during the course of a game.
And also between players and refs. And, I mean, that would be, quite something for us to be able to pick up and hear. And isn't Cuban talking about letting the fans at home cheer and having that actually affect what's going on in the arena? Isn't that already something that I've heard him say?
I mean, that's funny, because I had suggested the same thing. I had Harrison Barnes on my podcast a few weeks back, and we were talking about ways to do this. And I said something like that. I would love to see the world's largest Zoom call, right?
Yeah.
And you could split it between fans of each team, But I don't know, make it 3/4 one team, the home team, and 1/4 the other, and everybody could cheer from home. Like, I think that would be phenomenal. And it would be real. It would be live. It would be a little strange, but at least it would be not canned. I don't know what the league is planning on that side of things. They haven't quite gotten there yet. They've had bigger things to tackle first.
No, I'm sure. Last one for you, Howard. What about the media? Are you going? What's the conversation you're having with many of your colleagues? How many people are going to raise their hands or have a parent company that's going to pay for a room for 3 months to send somebody? What are we hearing about on the media front of covering and being part of this?
There will be a lot more public probably later today, but I can't say all of it right now because I'm part of the Pro Basketball Writers Board that has been working with the league on trying to do this. Mm-hmm. What I can tell you is what already leaked a week or two ago, and there's going to be a very small number of reporters who will be in the bubble itself. So that means you're committed for full 90 days, or your outlet at least will be committed for the full 90 days, and there's going to be a possibility to swap out at some point. But you might be committed for the full 3 months of sequester, basically, and you'll be under all the same restrictions, but without any of the perks that the NBA players and teams are going to get. And it means having your meals delivered to you. It means getting tested every day. It means no freedom of movement. So to answer part of your question, no, I'm not going to go to the bubble. Like, it's not justifiable. There's not enough of a payoff. It doesn't make sense. I have a family. Somebody else wants to do it. More power to them, but it's not for me.
Are you hearing members of your community that are similar or different? I mean, what's the general sense?
I've heard many more of my friends say no to the possibility of the bubble than maybe. A couple are kind of gung ho, like they like the idea. It's just a weird experience. And listen, it is a great story. If I were 20 years younger and single,
sure,
30 years younger and single,
nice.
If at a different stage of my career, I would have said, yeah, why not? Screw it. I'll be fine. Give me some video games and a few good books, and I'll go into sequester for 3 months, and I'll write this amazing story about this really weird NBA partial season in the middle of Disney World. But no, for a lot of people, a lot of my friends who have kids who cover the NBA, nobody wants to do that. And so I don't know how many people will actually volunteer for it. But again, it's a small number that the NBA is even going to allow in anyway.
Right.
I'll be interested to see if they get to the max number. There's going to be a second tier of reporters who can go down, not be in the bubble, stay anywhere you want, but you're not getting tested by the NBA, most likely, and you're not getting any access. The only thing you're getting is to go into the gym, watch the game from a distance in the stands, and that's it. All your interviews will be via Zoom. But even the people who are in the bubble, interviews are mostly going to be either a socially distanced press conference or via Zoom. So there's just not much payoff or incentive to be there, and everything is going to be streamed so that people can cover it from home. And the vast, vast, vast majority of print reporters who cover this league will be covering the bubble from home, not in the bubble and not in Orlando.
And then I guess the question will be then what happens for the following season, but I guess one step at a time, and we'll see how it goes. And, I appreciate the call, Howard. Really do, man.
No, Rich, always a pleasure.
Same here.
Yeah, let's hope by the time we get to next season, whenever that is, maybe December, that there's a little bit more ability to return to normal and that teams can play in their home markets. But I'm not that optimistic at the moment that that's going to be the case, given where we are in this country at this moment.
No, I know that. We never know what happens in therapeutics and all that stuff. In the meantime, you're going to have to get a haircut before December, Howard. You just, just go outside, sit in a chair outside, mask
up.
Here's
the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. New York City just started reopening, and barbershops finally reopened this week. But we finally bailed out of New York, and we're up in the Hudson River Valley.
Okay.
We needed a change of location, change of scenery. But things have been open for a while here, so I am optimistic that sometime in the next few days when I'm not working, I will find an open barbershop, and I will get this thing under control, and I will cease being Saul Barron.
Good to see.
Not a bad thing being Saul. We're just saying.
I know. You take care, Howard. Thanks for the call.
You too, Rich. Take care.
You got it. That's Howard Beck, Bleacher Report. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.